Hello and welcome to Literary Prospects. I'm Kelly Vick, your host, and it's my pleasure to introduce today's guest. Michelle Maryk graduated from Cornell University with a degree in English and attended the Yale Writers' Workshop. For the better part of 25 years, she's been a successful voiceover, on-camera commercial, and comedic actor, and she's a dual Swedish and U.S. citizen. The Found Object Society is her debut novel. Michelle Maryk, thank you so much for being here today to discuss your heart-pounding debut novel, The Found Object Society. Author Julia Barts says, unsettling, propulsive, sexy, The Found Object Society offers its protagonist and readers the ultimate thrill ride, the chance to experience death without dying. With lush, gorgeous prose, Michelle Maryk unspools a confident meditation on privilege, addiction, and grief. Do not miss this incredible debut. Author Fiona Davis says, this feverish tinderbox of a novel simmers with suspense. Maryk has concocted a gripping read, one that does a deep dive into questions surrounding mortality and culpability, money and madness, wrapped up in a unique, brilliantly written novel that kept me gasping for air. And author Danielle Tristani says, The Found Object Society is a mind-bendingly brilliant exploration of the nature of grief, the seductions of liminal experiences, and how alternate reality can renew, deepen, and destroy us. Addictive and beautifully rendered, Michelle Maryk has written one hell of a novel. And I will leave it on that one.
I still can't get over these blurbs. It's so nice.
There
It's
are
great.
so many of them too, Michelle, and
I
they're
know.
all great. It was hard to,
More is more.
yeah. But with that, welcome. And what can
Thank
you
you.
tell us about the Found Object Society? How do you describe this book?
Absolutely. So The Found Object Society is a novel of speculative suspense, and it centers around a deeply troubled socialite named Greta Davenport, who has lived with the terrible tragedy of losing her parents 20 years earlier. And she has filled that hole of guilt and regret with booze and sex and drugs this whole time, and she's inherited a huge sum of money far too early. And one night she's leaving a big gala, and she almost crashes her car while driving drunk because she's that irresponsible.
But
And
still lovable.
yet, yes, ultimately lovable and like, whoa. Um, but when she gets home to her big mansion, this mysterious blank white card slides under her front door, and she throws open the door, and there's no one there. She has no idea who put it there. She's kind of drunk and changes, doesn't think too much about it. The next morning, she's looking at her phone, and the phone happens to capture a hidden QR code within the fibers of the invitation. And it leads her into this very trippy sort of video on her phone, which is an invitation to become a member of the Found Object Society, where its members pay exorbitant sums of money to hold an object from many different eras, regions, there are thousands of them, and experience the death of the last person who died touching it. Um, and because she is this sort of addictive person, uh, these voyages, which is what we call these deaths, become increasingly addictive. And it's a high like none that she's ever known before in her life. But she soon discovers that maybe she can toy with what is going on within the voyages. And perhaps, dot, 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 she can somehow go back and change what has happened in her past by manipulating things and time. Um, and I'll leave it there because boy, can that spoil things if I keep going. But it's really fun. I mean, I had a great time. I mean, it explores deep issues, but I really wanted it to be sort of very escapist and transportive, and the different POVs from the voyages, made it fun for me and hopefully fun for the reader.
What was the spark that got this story started for you? It's a question that I ask
Yeah.
often, but I'm especially interested
Thank you.
in
Yeah.
this one.
Well, this was like the most clear aha moment I think maybe I've ever had in my life. I was sitting in our living room with the wood stove going. I was probably drinking some wine. Might have been a cat on my lap. Um, and I was scrolling, kind of doom scrolling through Instagram, and I came upon an ad for Etsy, and it was like a 1920s faceted martini glass. And I was like, oh wow, that's kind of cool looking. And I thought, I wonder what the person who last owned that like looked like. And I started picturing like a flapper with a fabulous black bob and like bright red lipstick and saying things like, let's grind the corn, honey. And I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. And I was like, wow, well, what if she died while she was holding it? And I was like, oh. And where would that energy have gone? What if it went into the glass? And I was like, oh. And just the words found object came into my mind, and that was it. Yeah. And so I kept trying to write this other novel I was working on, but this kept on waking me up in the middle of the night. And I was like, I'm a real completionist, kind of an OCD person. So it took a lot for me to say, nope, I'm putting that one on pause and I'm diving in. And April 23, I dove in and I was done by the first week of August 23. So it was like
Wow.
3 to 4 months, and I had the first draft, which at the time was like 120,000 words. So
Wow.
yeah, it
That's
was like
quick.
it was like a fever dream. But I do write quickly, but this was particularly like I was possessed.
And how did your characters then as you're writing, how did these
Mhm.
characters come to you?
Well, Greta came first, and the first line came kind of first. And the first line is this version of Greta Davenport doesn't care that she's about to drive drunk. And and so that came to me, and I'm not a real plotter. I write a
Mhm.
lot of notes in my phone. But I don't have big outlines or anything like that. So I'd been taking notes for a little while before I dove in, and I kind of knew where I wanted to start. Um, and I knew there would be objects and there would be these voyages. And so I was trying to pick different time periods. An editor that I worked with when I told her about this idea, who was actually mad at me for stopping writing the other book, she was like, no. And I was like, trust me, I think this is good. Um, and she sent me a picture of this 19th century French perfume bottle. It's this gorgeous little bottle covered in like gold threading and dotted with turquoise little orbs all over it. And I was like, good. There's one. And I was like, okay, 19th century France. That'll inform that. And then I really wanted something 70s, but I didn't want like a lava lamp because that seemed too, on the nose.
Mhm.
And so I asked my husband, and he was like, wait, what about this? And so he came up with the Elton John windshield wiper sunglasses, which you'll see.
Mhm.
Um, and then I really want to do something in 1920s, sort of like that martini glass, but not the martini glass. So I found a beautiful um, uh, enameled cigarette lighter from the 1920s. And I can't talk about the last object because that's a spoiler. But so I had my Greta, my protagonist Greta, and then I knew these other voyages, and I was going to let each object sort of inform whatever that particular sequence was. And I kind
Mhm.
of wrote you know, a little bit off the cuff. And I was like, okay, who do I want here? What kind of person? And I want to make sure they're all different. Um, yeah, so it was really fun. And what I did, I had originally thought that I would write all the Greta stuff sort of the present time frame
Mhm.
at once and then go back and write the voyages. But then I was like, you know what? I want to experience the voyages as Greta does. And because I think I'll find things there that might inform what's going to happen next.
Mhm.
So I wrote it beginning to end, like exactly as you see it. Um, so I was like, it was nice because I was like, okay, I need a Greta break. I need, she's a lot. And so it was like fun diving into the 19th century, sort of lovesick lady's maid. And then there's a really sad wannabe serial killer from the 1970s and in Central California. And then there's this aging silent movie star in 1920 Chicago who has to face the fear of talkie movies that are just about to start. Um, and because if she doesn't overcome that, it's over. Because there's no going back to silent movies. So it was a great ride. So I kind of let things, inform everything. Just sort of let objects inform what was going to happen next. I had kind of ideas, little notes, and then just sort of let it go.
It really does. And so the objects came first.
hmm I had loose ideas about yeah, I had no idea about the first one, the perfume bottle. And I
Mhm.
saw that, and that's sort of what started the ball rolling in that direction. I was like, what can we do there? And I also didn't want like it to be like this person is killed by this object. Like I didn't want it that obvious. So each one,
Mhm.
like you're gonna be like, wait, how is this gonna work in to the death, which is the final part of each. It's not giving anything away, it's what the book's about. Um, that's what informed, each one of these voyages, which are probably like maybe like 30 pages each or something. So it was fun. I got to write like short stories kind of throughout. Um, yeah,
Yes. So interesting that you wrote it beginning to end because that was
yeah,
a question that I had for you because I thought
yeah,
the structure was so interesting.
yeah.
That we're in Greta's point of view, our
hmm
protagonist in the beginning, and then we sort of switch point of view as Greta switches point of view
Yes.
and jump into these different time periods. And
hmm
I was thinking, yes, perhaps you had taken some time and written this little short story over here and then this
Right.
little short story over there, but
Yeah.
no.
No, no, I just decided, yeah, it was a really conscious decision. Because I felt it was really important to see what would come of it. Because there are
Mhm.
things that I can't really mention that start to happen, and that actually informed the whole like story arc that I was unaware of, until we got there. And just as like some context back, I come from an acting improv background, so improvisation actually plays a huge role for me when I write.
Mhm.
Um, and it's sort of given me the confidence to just sort of go on like that and trust that, that training or whatever you want to call it sort of will lead me in a direction where I'll find like beginning, middle, and details that will inform a larger story and that sort of thing. So, um,
What was your research like for
oh,
then? Because I'm picturing it as being intense research because there are so many fine details from different places and
yeah,
time periods.
yeah,
But then I'm also now picturing you just like writing solid for like
yeah, yes. So there's different levels of research. Like for the present day, which is in New York, and the Found Object Society itself, um, it's a fictional society. Don't go looking for it, but it's an actual building, 273 Water Street in the South Street Seaport. And what I was looking for was um, a very old building in New York City. This happens to be the third oldest building in New York City. It's pretty nondescript, actually. It's just a nice brick building. You'll see
Mhm.
it, actually.
Yeah.
We'll be 300 feet away from there if you go. Um, and uh, and I wanted something with a dark history. And so I started sort of doing some research and found this has a very, very dark history to it. Um, and then I think the most research heavy one was the first one in 19th century France, just because, they speak differently. And I'm not talking French because it's written in English, but, there are different ways people address each other, and there's hierarchies, and of course they don't have telephones and cell phones and cars and that sort of thing. So sometimes I would sort of write a little loosely, so I could continue writing and then make a note, like come back to this and make sure,
Mm.
this isn't like an anachronism or something, or you know. Um, but that was the most intensive one. And then I would look up, yeah, yeah, for each one, I'd look up sort of highlights to make the reader feel like that they're grounded in that, but not burdened by a lot of historical details,
Mhm.
because I wanted to center around the personalities and have the era and environment be the background. Um, so it was really fun actually. And in the 1920s, like Chicago, like I had, if I could write an entire book in like 1920s slang, it would be like it's just a riot. Just this, I have like pages and pages of things. I'd be like, penis. Okay, hang on. Like, let me look that up. Or beer, or drunk, or throwing up, or like just all kinds of stuff. For like leg. So and I knew like not having overkill with that, but enough throughout would ground the reader there,
Mhm.
without
Mhm.
having to be like, oh, where's the footnote for that? Or
Mhm.
um, but yeah, so just enough detail to make it feel like I knew what I was talking about, and that you feel like you're really in that time period and with that person.
I love that point of it being just enough. Because
Hmm.
if it's too much, then you lose that pace, this great like
Right.
pace that you have. Um, but you do feel like you're in the hands of someone skilled and knowledge
Oh,
as you're
good.
reading it.
Okay.
Because only
Phew.
take, yeah. Just to
Good.
let you know.
Okay, that's a relief. Good.
You've you've said that as a kid you were obsessed with all things supernatural,
Hmm.
and that doesn't seem to have gone away.
Oh no. No, no, it's in the DNA. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
What fascinates you about the supernatural, do you think?
We have to go back a little ways, Kelly. So my dad, before I was even born, he was an actor in Hollywood. Just like B movie stuff and TV stuff, um, and and he was always like, okay, picture. Have you ever seen the movie Anchorman with Will
Yes.
Ferrell? Like
Yeah.
that's kind of my dad. Like full of a lot of hot air and like stories and like whatever. Um, but he was really growing up, like he was always really into ghost stories, and he was the guy that would come on school trips when we'd go to like Blairstown, New Jersey, and like be in cabins, and he'd be the official like ghost storyteller. Um, and as a kid, like he'd take me to a Dairy Queen that was right next to a big graveyard and like tell scary stories. And then I'm way dating myself, but he took me and my cousin from Sweden, I'm half Swedish, to see Alien in the movie theater. Um, and it was like the greatest, like seminal experience of my life. Like I loved it so much. And my cousin was so terrified she ran to the bathroom and threw up. Uh,
Oh.
and so all to say, this just like this was how I grew up. This is what, I loved watching In Search of, and like just all these movies. And I didn't come back to like narrative fiction writing until really 2019. I was an English major in college, and wrote a lot that, but I was also acting. And then when I graduated, really I spent the next 25 whatever years as an actor and did a lot of commercials, voiceovers. And the writing I did was more comedy oriented, like one woman shows and that sort of thing. And then it wasn't until 2019 that I came back to narrative writing. And that's when I started writing my first novel. So it's not that long ago. But I'm trying to remember the origin of this question. This, let's see.
Supernatural.
Yes. Okay.
Being our supernatural obsession.
Yes. Yeah. So when I started, I knew, like, I don't know that I mean, I think I could, but I need there to be some speculative or supernatural element whenever I write a novel. Um, I feel like it just, there's, we live on this plane kind of up here, but it's all this, not to be too Stranger Things, but
Hmm.
under here that is like really interesting to me. And it like, pops up. And
Hmm.
so I think like that's just always fascinated me. And it's also an interesting way to be able to maybe talk about something that is current and present, but in a sort of oblique way,
Hmm.
without saying like, I'm talking about, you know, I mean, terrible, how terrible rich people are and how, we become wealth obsessed and capitalism, this and that, So it's a way to sort of back off from that,
Hmm.
um, but still be able to address it in those sorts of ways. And it's kind of fun. Like, there are things that happened in the book that I had no idea that they were going to happen until they happened. I won't give away too much, but like some of the trail cam, the video camera stuff, I had no clue, no clue about that. And then I was like, oh, that's something. So, so it just crops up. Like I can't help it. I just can't.
Well, speaking of coming at deeper themes and whatnot,
Hmm.
um, we touched on this a little bit earlier too, that the Found Object Society is certainly thrilling and suspenseful, but it's also, as we heard Julia Barts saying in the blurbs, a meditation on privilege and addiction and
Hmm.
grief. I loved how she put that.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little more?
Yes, I think a lot of that came from me. I moved to New York City in the early 90s, and lived there for just about like 30 years. So during that time, so much changed, so much. It used to be that like even though you're still kind of broke, like the people who made the city run, nurses or teachers or cops or they could still afford to live there. And
Mm.
little by little, that they start getting pushed further and further and further out of like the heart of the city, into the outer boroughs or, just further and further. And so you start seeing this huge, huge like disparity between wealth and, and people who are just barely scraping by. And I notice more and more, like everything is luxury condo this or, high end that. And and so it just started really, it just became so glaring to me. And also the idea that, I met people that are like, I remember there was a solar eclipse once, right? Kind
Mhm.
of a big deal. Right?
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
kind of cool once in a,
Mhm.
and people being like, eh, it was all right. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, come on,
Yeah.
experience wonder, please. And so that sort of thinking is what I took into the development of Greta. But she also has to be redeemable. So I needed her for many reasons to have this tragic past to make people, feel something for her, um, but also hope that maybe she can find some kind of redemption. And she makes fun of herself a lot. I mean, she is aware of how horrible like she can be.
Mm.
Um, but that's really where that came from, this like 3 decade long observation of the city that I lived in and loved and still do. But just to be able to kick back and see that as a whole and maybe what that means from point A to where we are now, the moving point B, um, was really interesting to me. Yeah.
What I want to ask what your process is like. I know we've talked about how this
Oh,
novel came out kind of,
mhm.
in this
Yeah,
kind of crazy way, but you were also working on another novel before that. So, what does your process usually look like when you
right.
spark up an idea and
I
then get
guess.
through to finished?
Yeah, yeah.
Is it different every time?
It, it's different-ish every time. Like I said, like this really was just like a smack on the head, the way it came to me. But generally, like there's always creative stuff playing in the background. And I find that especially if I'm working out or maybe on a walk or something,
Mm-hmm.
that's when things start cropping up
Mm-hmm.
and I'll get an idea for something. And then I start taking notes in my note app on my phone, and I give it whatever the title is, and I just start taking notes and notes. And then, things just sort of germinate in the background. And then I'm like, okay, I need to start writing this. So I use, not to get in the weeds too much, but I use the app Scrivener for novel writing. I don't use probably 75% of the cool things that you could use on it,
I feel
but
like everybody says that about Scrivener.
I know. And new cars.
Yeah.
Like give me an old stick shift and I'm fine. But all the new stuff on a car, it's like I can't do it. Um, but so I usually transfer my notes like into the margin along the side.
Mhm.
And I have some sense. I start kind of, maybe writing little things. I will often know the beginning and the end. Um, and like the end usually really clearly. And then it's just a matter of finding the way from beginning to end. Um, and then I just kind of start. And usually I wake up early. I'm like an early riser, like 6 in the morning. And I usually try and write until, the morning's over as much as possible. Um, and then I just kind of run out of gas. Yeah, I'm hoping I can learn to like just go longer in the day, but I really write quite a lot every day. I can sometimes write up to like 2,000 words like in that period of
Oh,
time.
wow.
Just because I let it go as much as I can. And
Mhm.
it's a first draft and they're do-overs and you can go back later.
Mhm.
Um, but so that's my process. And then I just kind of keep building, because it'll keep coming to me. I'm like, oh, what if Greta meets a man, outside the found object society? And oh, who would he be? And let's find out. And, so it's just like a lot of that. And then every day I just transpose those new notes into the margins. So I'm not forgetting because I'm like that person. If they're not like Post-its
Mhm.
hanging, like,
I was
forget.
noticing the
Yeah.
post-its behind you or
Yeah.
the cards on the yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Those
love
are
that.
actually all different book ideas, if you can believe it. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Whether they'll
great.
they'll fill pages or not, I'm not sure, but and then all kinds of other stuff. But that's basically my process. I'll think and think and think about something, take notes and notes until I can't take it anymore, and then I'm like, no, I have to start. So, and I can usually do a draft in 3 to 4 months.
That's
Um,
incredible.
that's that's the way it
Awesome.
goes. Some say it's perfect, but you know, just get it all out there.
You talked a little bit earlier when we were talking about where your love for all things supernatural
Hmm.
started in childhood, about how you were doing some writing and then you mentioned that you came back to narrative writing.
Hmm.
Um, but did you start out doing narrative writing as a child, or how
Yeah.
did your
Yes.
what was your
Well,
origin
well,
story?
kind of. Um, I remember, I so distinctly remember I had this wee little dark green spiral notebook, and I would write my little poems. I would like write poems
Mhm.
in there. And then I also came up with, I, I've always absolutely loathed canned tuna. I promise this is going somewhere. Um, and and so I was like, I'm going to write a book called I Hate Tuna. And so it was basically the story of this is a true story. I don't know if you've ever heard the story Alive. It's about
Mhm.
it's about an a plane crash in like, I don't know if it's the Andes or what. But they essentially have to resort to cannibalism. This is me as a child. So I'm like, well, it's going to be that, but it's only there's the only cargo is canned tuna. So so she has to eat canned tuna to survive. So that was that one. That never, that never saw the, that never became any more than that. But anyway, that's the way my brain was churning. So it's that, and then in college, I really loved short stories. And I think maybe the voyages really are kind of like short stories. So like my thesis, if you will, I wrote a collection of short stories. And I thought never in a million years would I be able to write a novel. I just thought, no way. Um, it's like I don't have the patience. I don't know, cut to, a few decades later and I was like, oh, I'm old enough to have the patience for that. So um, and I doubted myself at first. I was like, I started writing the first one. I was like, I think I can do this. Okay. Like I just tried not to be overwhelmed by the idea of what that meant, like the pile of words you have to write, just to try and take it every day at a time. And each morning, I meet the blinking cursor with a bit of terror,
Mhm.
but somehow get through it. And I'm like, I'll never be afraid again. Then the next morning, I'm like, I am so scared. I can't do this. And but it works out somehow. Maybe the fear helps.
Maybe the fear helps.
Maybe the fear helps. Yeah.
What was the road to publication like for you?
Um, well, for me, one of the biggest, most important decisions I made was to start going to writing conferences. Um, I first went to AWP and I was like, oh, that's interesting. It was a little overwhelming. And then I went to Thriller Fest and I was like, oh, these are my people.
Mm.
For those who don't know, Thriller Fest is a really great writers conference dedicated to thriller mystery writers in New York City every year. And it just totally just put me on the track. I started meeting people, authors. The community was so generous. I started going to panels. Um, and I just started, instead of going to an MFA, which, some of my professors had wanted me to do, and
Mhm.
I didn't, I was like, this is my MFA. So I'm absorbing it all. I'm immersing myself like a foreign language. And and so, I started meeting people. I started querying my first novel, getting close. And then I'd written another one. I started querying that, getting close. And then I was getting really close with like a couple people.
Mhm.
And, I'm compressing here. But
You've got two novels at this point, right?
yeah, I had
Did I
written
understand you correctly? Okay.
Yep, I'd written two, The Overgrown and Cigarette Girl, and then I'd started writing one called Mater. That's the one I stopped, and started and wrote the Found Object Society. And so at that point, I had a couple agents interested, and the one I ended up signing was she passed on Cigarette Girl, but she was like, "What was the one you were working on again?" And I told her about Found Object Society. I was like, "It's messy. It's a first draft." Um, I said, but there's another agent interested, so I totally get it. And she's like, what's it about? And so I sent her a thing. She's like, oh, just get me like 50 pages. I don't care how messy they are. So I cleaned up a little, sent her the 50, and she was like, yes. And so we had a great call, and I signed with her. She's very editorial, which I liked. So we
Mhm.
edited the manuscript before we went on pub. We started going, I mean, on sub, we started going on submission in March of, I guess it's 24. Yes, March of 24. And in May, we had a couple offers. So that was nice. So that was, I mean, it felt like I was going to die for 2 months.
Wow.
But it was reasonably quick in the scheme of things. And then, yeah, I met with a couple of editors. I loved mine. She was great. It was like she understood. She was there writing with me. Um, and and then we had a deal, and here we are. Like, what is it? Well, it's not quite 2 years, but it's close. It's like, 18, 20 months or
Mhm.
something. Which was one of the bigger surprising things because I was like, was like, oh, we wrote it and then it'll be out in like 6 months, something. No, it takes a really long time. So,
But
um,
here we are.
but here we are. Somehow we've managed to get to this spot, and it's great.
Is there anything that you know now that you wish you had known
Um, I
when you
guess
first
part
started?
of it is that the really extended. I mean, I think I kind of knew, but there were so many other things that one gets concerned and worried about that I
Mhm.
pushed it aside. Yeah, just like the timeline and patience. Um, and yeah, so that just knowing that, like, okay, this is just gonna it's gonna take 18 months, and there's a good reason for that. And but that was one of the big things. And then because I do come from like a production acting background,
Mm.
I'm pretty hands-on. So, there are times when I've had to learn to back off, to be like, okay, there are people that are actually taking care of this. I don't need to, stay on it too much. So that's actually been nice in a lot of ways, to not have to do everything. But they really let me contribute a lot. Like, I fought hard for the cover. I knew what I wanted. That was great. Yeah, it's been a really, knock on wood, it's been a really nice experience.
How did you know what you wanted for the cover?
Let's see, how did I? Well, once you get into the Found Object Society, you see that there's a very trippy wallpaper in
Hmm.
there, with all sorts of imagery. And I really, and because I'm a very visual person, so this really came to me like I could see it, like I could see like this intertwined kind of viney cover, with the different objects in it,
Hmm.
sort of little Easter eggs throughout. And here, and
Oh,
here's
yep, there
the,
it is. It's
it's
beautiful.
metallic too, which is kind of funky to see in the light, but it's really luscious.
Yeah.
So, um, I really wanted it to be slightly maybe disorienting, very lush,
Hmm.
uh, and yeah, and so I had this image, and I had to sort of fight to explain it and show other examples, and but they were game, and everyone's so happy. So yeah, with it. So,
It turned out beautifully.
oh, thank you, thank you.
What is your best advice for aspiring authors?
Um, get out there. Get out of the writing cave sometimes. I mean, yes, the writing is the backbone for the whole thing to work.
Mhm.
Um, but truly the most important thing to me was getting myself, even though I found it very difficult at first to like just walk into a party where I don't know anyone, or a hotel lobby bar, and just be like, hello, let's talk, and not be like cheesy about it.
Mhm.
But to get out there and learn and talk to people in the community, other writers, authors, editors, um, and it and just, conferences can be expensive. Pick and choose. Get on some kind of, community boards or something where you can ask questions and say like, hey, this is what I'm writing. This is what I'm interested in. Which one do you think would work for me?
Mhm.
Um, because each one has its own merits and what the conference is geared toward. Um, but but I definitely would not be here right now on a podcast with Kelly Vick, having a book coming out, if I had not gone to the writing conferences and really started. Just, you got to open yourself up. It's scary, and talk to people. But you will find that they are so generous. Like, it's amazing how open and helpful people are. If you're just respectful and speak from the heart and are genuine. It's really something. I'm forever in debt to the Julia Bartses, the Danielle Trusonis, people who I looked up to and, read their books, and then now they're friends and they've written blurbs, and that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have started going to conferences. So,
That's such great
and
advice.
number one.
And Thriller Fest specifically, I feel like I've
Mhm.
heard multiple times people have mentioned how generous
Mhm.
that particular community.
Yes. Yeah. I can't speak for like romance or YA.
Yeah.
I've heard different things. Um, but thrill, I don't know. It's like we let our evil out on the page and then we can be good to each other in person. And that seems to be the way it is. And it's great. And I look forward to these things so much. Like we have so much fun. It's great.
It's really great. We have a traditional last question
Oh.
on this podcast, and it is when the Found Object Society is made into a movie or series, what do
Wait.
you think the theme song should be?
Oh, wow. Okay. I have an entire Spotify playlist called the Found Object Society. I think pretty
Right.
much every one of those songs would work, but there's one song in particular by the Knox, called New York Narcotic. Um, and and just the pace of it, and it's just that's the song. I can just feel it and see it.
I want to
So
go listen to it now.
yeah.
Michelle Maryk, thank you so, so much for being here today. It's been so great getting to talk with you.
Oh, thank you so much. It was awesome.
Thanks for joining us on Literary Prospects. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review. We'll see you next time.